fight for childhood innocence and children's safety has never been more important, but has also never been a harder battle to fight than in the modern day. Nowadays, groomers and predators come in many different shapes, sizes, and appearances, whether they be wearing hoodies and unimpressionable clothing, suits and ties, and stand in front of lecterns giving speeches, or in lab coats and donning the halls of our academic institutions. Through the screen, through unfettered access to all manner different quote-unquote information and education, it's never been easier to target people's children en masse. Until the children of today reach an age where they are able to discern these things for themselves, they rely on us, families and communities to ensure that they are kept safe from these evil individuals. One of the people at the forefront of this battle and the war that this is a part of is whom I sit down with today.
We're dealing with an almighty power grab, George, right?
Today on Voice of the Valleys, very troubling scenes coming out of Iran. I say this as somebody that doesn't like the Iranian, the IRGC Mullah regime, but for somebody that said they wanted to be a peacetime president who campaigned on no drafts, no wars, etc., it's very puzzling to see the way that things have gone. And we need to talk about it because this absolutely affects Britain and the British people. Not only that, the psychopathically retarded Greens have come out with a policy to make people have a license to own dogs, all the while saying they want unfettered third world migration from everywhere else in the world to the small island that we call Britain. And recently, a man from Newport got jailed for wanting to be Wales's Islamic State spokesperson. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host, friend of the neighbourhood far right, thug always circle, unless he's not Mr. George Cresswell, Lord/Lade, if you want to use my appropriate titles. So, hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. And get into today, conversation likely going to be dominated by some of the scenes coming out of Iran at the moment. And just to preface out the way, I don't like the IRGC, don't like the Iranian regime, the stories I see coming out of there of what, pardon me, Iran's own government is doing to its own people, right? I fully get that. I empathize with them. I see that there's certain parallels between how many British people feel and how the Iranian people feel. But it is impossible to get away at this point from Iran is Iran, and Iranian people are the Iranian people, and Britain is Britain, and British people are the British people. And we have to have a question as to whether the interests of different groups that are also vying for control in this way, and what increasingly seems to be a regime change war, right? That's the rhetoric that's being used now, is actually in Britain's interest and in the British people's interests. It's getting harder and harder to make that case. And the biggest thing that pisses me off at the moment, not just the U-turn from Trump, seemingly just becoming the very thing. The whole classic moniker, you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? The way he's gone soft on many of the things that he said that he was going to do, even prominent right-wing commentators in America, like Matt Walsh, calling him out on many of these things, saying that, look, we can afford this, we can, go and push this regime change war in Iran, but we can't deal with the masses of illegal immigrants. And seemingly, again, I talked about this a lot in my members video on Animal Farm as well, because one of the biggest things that Animal Farm makes people aware of is even how the most noble of things when they start can become the very things which they set to overthrow, right? Drain the swamp, all of this stuff. Well, happens when somebody then gets into that position and they choose to maintain the swamp instead. How many prosecutions have you seen for the lawfare that was engaged against Trump and all of these things, right? And seemingly now he's turning his back on the very base that got him elected, a large part of it at the very least, in favor of the people whom he's now in the club with, which are the people that he was elected to do things about. So it's the classic thing where the ruler takes over in a coup and the revolutionaries end up actually, getting essentially called off or forgotten by the leader as they unite with some of the people who were important to the previous regime, because now it's shifted from revolution to maintaining the status quo. Or want to upset the apple cart if you're the one sat on top of it, right? It's because seemingly there's no politician out there at the moment which is why, I still think we have to be skeptical, a healthy skepticism, right, of what I believe is the one true source of opposition in Britain, and that is Restore Britain and Rupert Lowe. Let's get on to in a little bit. But again, this can happen to anyone because no human is infallible, right? At least that's the way that I see it anyway. So, a couple of updates before we go into that, though. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because we've got Conversation with Kim Isherwood, hopefully dropping very, very soon. We'll be dropping for members very soon, but likely for public at the end of the week. Then I'm also in contact at the moment with Sam Mellier to hopefully have him on the show. Nothing concrete yet, but he's expressed interest in coming on the show. We're just trying to work some things out, so hopefully we'll have a good conversation with Sam coming up in the near future as well. And obviously my members video on Animal Farm, you can go and get that in the locals Patreon or YouTube membership areas. Please do. It's one of the best videos that I've done. Please do. It's one of the best videos that I've done. And you can also check out the previous installment in the book club series that I've done as well, The Last Girl by Nadia Murad, which is about the Yazidi genocide. So what's been coming out of Iran recently? And again, like I said, preface, I don't like the Iranian regime. I don't like the IRGC, right? The same reasons I don't like our own regime, right? For a lot of the same reasons. Ours being more secular, atheistic, and theirs being kind of like this, hardline Islamic theocracy kind of government, right? But a lot of similar things that you see, right, with government being tyrannical over its people. So I feel for the Iranian people in this way. I feel for the Iranian people. It's actually making me talk about this and thinking about what it's going to be like for them long term with the ramifications of what we've seen coming out of Iran now. I think some of the scenes we've seen coming out of Iran are, if you wanted to see in the modern day what it would have looked like, and obviously this is not exactly the same, but what it would have looked like in the mid-40s, after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima. Remember they were saying that with the nuclear fallout, with the cloud and all of this, that there was this, like, the sun was essentially blocked out and it was, raining. There's like acidic rain and all of these things, right? If you wanted to see scenes that were reminiscent of that, although not exactly the same, you only need to look at Tehran at the moment. And Trump disillusioned a lot of people when he talked about the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, which people like me, I could say that I can understand the logic with that. It's perfectly consistent with his position, right? Iran can never get a nuclear weapon. He's been saying that for a long, long time. So that was at least relatively understandable and justifiable, if you will. There's not a drastic change in his position. It's become a lot harder to go down the same route of justification and rationalization with regards to this one, especially, which has given a hell of a lot of good propaganda to the left, right, in the run-up to these midterms now. You have seemingly the same things I was calling out before with regards to, like, the media figureheads, the media talking heads and all of this stuff regurgitating the same lines, right, with regards to, if there was ever an atrocity that took place which the left wanted to bury, right, they would get their marching orders, they would get their talking points, and you would see every single news host saying the same thing, right? Like we saw with COVID vaccine, a great example, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, right? All of these things. Now that can be applied to Trump's regime, which we'll get onto a little bit later on in the show. So you would have seen these probably, ladies and gentlemen. This is just some of the scenes coming out of Iran recently. It looks like something biblical. Not gonna lie, it does look like something biblical, which is really terrifying. This is one of the videos that even I shared because people were making the argument, right, which I even entertained, what I think is rather like stupidly for a little while, that the actions taking place at the moment were going to aid in the mass deportation efforts of Britain, right? Because people were saying, like, look, once the regime is overthrown, Iranians will want to go home, all of this stuff, right? Well, they have recently announced that they elected a new supreme leader, right? So I suppose you could say they're not out of the woods yet if you want to continue trying to make this argument, right? But you've got scenes. In fact, I was just going to crop it to see if I could bring it up on my other screen, but you've got scenes like this coming out of Iran, and it honestly looks like something out of Sodom and Gomorrah. It honestly looks like something out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Looks like literal hell. Right, you got plumes of smoke going up seemingly, kilometers, miles into the air. Can only imagine how hot this is at the moment, right? And there's another video as well of this from a slightly greater distance as well. You can see how high those plumes extend up as they targeted oil depots. So it's following Israeli strikes in this instance, according to AF Post, on major oil depots in Kuhak and Shahran in Tehran, as well as Karaj. You can see some of the things in the comments as well. Obviously, a lot of the ways people are leaning on this issue. So, you could say that with the regime, maybe with the objectives, really trying to do almost like apologetics on this issue, you could say, as many of the others will say in a moment, that this is just the price to pay for long-term stability. I don't think there's necessarily a very good track record for that. Look at Syria. You look at, Libya. You look at any of these other countries where this has happened. You even now, rather weirdly, have the Taliban, from what I've seen, siding with Trump on this issue, siding with the Israelis, which is really weird. What weird times we live in, right? I don't know if it's a good thing that you're on the same side as the Taliban in this issue. I could be wrong. I don't know. I could be wrong. But this is the thing that I said, ladies and gentlemen, that's really worrying for the people, which I've seen a lot of, comments on social media apparently saying, whoever's saying we didn't want this or we didn't ask for this, don't be doing apologetics for the regime. I don't believe that's what I'm doing at all. But you've got literal, it's important to note, ladies and gentlemen, especially when I'm viewing this from first and foremost how this affects Britain and the British people. That's my chief concern. So I think for anybody in Britain and for any British person should be their real chief and only concern, right, when it comes to these things, is how it's going to affect us, because our politicians should be acting in our best interest and really in our best interest alone, right? That's what they were elected for. But this is the landscape, the skyscape, if you will, if that's not even a word, but over Tehran as well. You can see it's completely black. They've blocked out the sun.
Rain.
Now listen to
there
this.
was actually rain here in Tehran this morning, and you can see here, because this is a white car, that the rain is actually apparently saturated with oil. You can see on my finger that it's completely blackened, and that's something that's been coming down for the better part of this morning. So, of course, that's also a concern for folks here in Tehran, that there's this rain that came down that seems to be saturated with oil.
So you've literally got oil rain coming down. And somebody put it in the comments as well, isn't this what got many of our vets sick back when Desert Storm happened? Can't be good to breathe oil. And the person who posted this saying, yeah, please pray for the children in Iran. Absolutely. Well, pray for every innocent person. Pray for every innocent person. Somebody asking in the comments then, Grok, is this fake reporting? Grok then seemingly corroborating that in fact this indeed is Israeli strikes hit multiple Tehran area oil depots, as I mentioned before. Fires released thick black smoke, rain mixed with oil and soot created by the oily black precipitation. It's been apparently confirmed by many other reports as well. So the scenes coming out of this at the moment, bad enough. Even if you don't like the regime and really don't care for it to be deposed, you're not going to miss the mullahs or anything like that. And you're speaking about this purely out of concern for how it's going to affect your people, right? I.e. the British people, in my instance. There are some things that need to be highlighted, though, which may make us question as to whether this is being done in the best way, if it ever was something that needed and should have been done in the first place, right? At least from, again, America and the West's perspective. I suppose in this way, Trump sort of backed himself into a corner a little bit. There was really no way for him to really distance himself from this issue, because he said that he would be there, right? Which, on the one hand, right, want to be there for people being oppressed by their own government is admirable. But again, the way that you do it, certainly the way that the Israelis have done it, it seems that the Israelis in this instance seemingly have been particularly cutthroat with regards to this, and even now causing a bit of discord between themselves and the Americans because of how seemingly overboard they've gone and done this, right? Seemingly in their interest to get as much out of this as they can, regardless of who dies. And again, there's maybe some things we can talk about with regards to that, way certain people view the world and stuff like that. But there was a strike that was on an Iranian girls' school, and investigators, as of reporting on March the 7th, which is 2 days ago, so there might be an update. If I find an update to this story in between the the production, the editing, and when this episode goes out, you'll see a screenshot or whatever it is coming up here now. So again, if you're not watching this might be good to watch, because sometimes I put things up in the post, right? Because things can break and change, and I try to keep things up to date as possible, right? So make sure you're looking on screen if you haven't done so already, just in case that there's something that popped up on screen, if there is an update. U.S. behind strike on Iranian girls' school. Investigators believe officials suggest America was probably to blame for an incident that killed 165 civilians. So this was an incident where American forces likely responsible for strikes on an Iranian girls' school that killed as many as 165 students and teachers. Saturday's attack on Shajar Tiabe Elementary School in southern Minab is the single deadliest incident in 7 days of war, which has killed more than 1,230 people across Iran. Again, this is the thing. Pales in comparison, and this is not to justify it by any means, let's justify what's happened here. Look how many the regime killed. So we're not dealing with, good regime in Iran that are being deposed, if anything, as a result to protest inside their own country. They slaughtered about 40,000 of their own people, right? So we're not dealing with a good regime that we should be feeling sorry for, at least in my opinion anyway. If U.S. forces, the biggest thing I was going to say is that it's the civilians that suffer the most, right? They've already got a new supreme leader, which was the guy's son, right? So what really was accomplished, if anything, or are we just going to continue this and continue this whole war is peace thing? If U.S. forces were responsible, it would rank among the worst cases of civilian casualties in the past 3 decades of American wars in the Middle East. Witnesses told The Telegraph on Saturday morning the attack came after the school's head teacher called parents to take their children home early because a war had started. I'll just see if I can play this video a moment. Is this video going to play? Let's see if we can play it. Oh, there we go. I'll play it on mute. This is the aftermath of the airstrike on a school in Minab, by the way. That's what this is. This is the aftermath of an airstrike in Minab. Horrifying scenes, literally pulling them out of the rubble and stuff like this. Can't believe how, when I was seeing the scenes coming out of Gaza and stuff like that, how desensitized I got to it, and thinking that there's no good solution to this whole problem, right? Which is, in many ways, you think about when Britain had the mandate, we had attacks coming from the Israelis, we had attacks coming from the Arabs. Maybe now we should just leave well enough alone and worry about our own affairs, right? If this is what the people in this area of the world are going to do, have at it. Just don't get involved, right? Because then you get involved, right? You see two people arguing outside a nightclub, right? And then you want to get involved because they're going to, try and separate them or whatever. You're liable to get friggin' attacked as well. So sometimes it's just better just to stay out of it. Explosion hit the building 40 minutes later, according to one parent who managed to collect his daughter in time, spoke to The Telegraph via an intermediary. Many of those killed were children from outlying villages whose parents had not yet reached the school for the early pickup. These are the people that suffer, right? Whether it's an autocratic, tyrannical regime like the IRGC, and then whether it's the intervention that comes afterwards, seemingly Israelis acting on Israeli interests, and seemingly as well Americans acting on Israeli interests. These are the people who suffer the most, right? Just the regular people who don't have the recourse, right? Like the regular people in Britain who are going to have to deal with the economic fallout of all of this shit now. It's those people, right? The people on the lower rungs of society, the societies in the societies that are affected, right? The people not in positions of power, the people who don't have the ability to escape, the people who don't have infinite money and infinite means, right, to do these kinds of things, they're the ones going to suffer the most. So that's why when you see things like this now, it makes you very, very uncomfortable. It seems that America, at the very least, the American leadership, may not be acting on its own best interests. With Trump in this very short clip, it's only 13 seconds. So there might be something that came before this to add a little bit of context. It's cut off just after Trump says that maybe they were coming after the US as well. I don't know how credible that is, right? But he outright admits that if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel. So he's saying that they done this, right, on behalf of Israel, and there may be more to this story coming up a little bit later on as well, which is why we should be getting some answers with regards to this supposed greatest ally of ours.
Years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world, and I think we have great support, and I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. Years they've been killing.
So if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and gave us a shot. That was possible. Now, given what, they know America can do, I don't see how it would be in their best interests to do this, right? To take a shot at America. Could be right. Obviously, I'm not the one with all of the intelligence at the very top level of the American government. So, could be. But it does seem that they're doing it on behalf of Israeli interests, which, in this instance now, America being dragged into another conflict in the Middle East, which, as far as I'm aware, was some things that they directly campaigned against and actually threw shade at the left, saying that if you want to, let me just see if I can pull up some of the things that J.D. Vance said before, as we'll get onto a little bit later. If you want to avoid the draft, if you want to, people like Kamala Harris send our sons and daughters, our young people, to fight in stupid wars. It's the young generation that carries the burden of that. We're going to stop sending our young people away to faraway lands. We're not the policemen of the world. Some questions got to be asked. If you wanted to create a better recipe for making people like me, just regular people, ask serious questions as to whether now what we're being told about this is actually true, and if the good guys are actually the good guys, and if the bad guys are actually the bad guys, you couldn't really create a better recipe. Off the back of this now conflict in Iran, off the back of this now is going to send, a massive migration wave to Britain, as we'll talk about in a little bit. Off the back of Trump, as we'll go over in a moment as well, going squishy on a lot of the promises that he made to his base, right? One of the chief ones was mass deportations of every single illegal. Doesn't matter if they're kind, doesn't matter if they're here working, doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm speaking from, an American perspective. Obviously, I don't actually live in America. But illegals that went over the border into America, deport every single one. Mass deportations. DEI, the acronym of diversity, equity, inclusion, co-opted by conservatives to mean deport every illegal. And now Trump's saying that seemingly that's not going to be possible. Seemingly taking a turn for the Nigel Farage, which is really, really worrying. Really, really worrying. You then have, in addition to all of this stuff, the leadership in the UK being just absolutely disgusting on every single face. Netanyahu now taking it upon himself, seemingly, this was published again 2 days ago, to threaten the West. To threaten them. Suppose a greatest ally, mind you, threatening you now. I demand that Western governments do what is necessary to fight anti-Semitism and provide safety for Jewish communities worldwide. I demand action from them now, or there will be consequences.
אני דורש מממשלות המערב לעשות את מה שנדרש כדי להילחם באנטישמיות ולתת את הביטחון הדרוש, את ההבטחה הדרושה לקהילות היהודיות בעולם, וכדאי שיקשיבו לאזהרות שלנו. אני דורש מהם פעולה עכשיו.
Not to be that guy. Isn't this what the entire Israel thing was supposed to solve? Isn't this what Israel was supposed to be? A safe homeland for the Jewish people? So they got that in 48. They've had a hard time defending themselves, and to their credit, they've defended themselves tooth and nail throughout all of the times where people have tried to exterminate them. Right? For all of the controversy around it, they have that homeland. Right? Isn't this what Israel is supposed to be about? Safety and providing for Jewish people. Now they have that. They're now threatening the rest of the world. That everything has to be tailored around them. So this is very, very weird, because you have then the European Conference, the president of the European Conference of Rabbis saying that they need to unite with the Muslims, right, against nationalism, right? So seemingly now furthering the sentiment that Jewish people need to unite with people that are also the enemies to stifle nationalist sentiment in the West, which would seemingly incorporate Europe and all of those other countries as well, which many of those people are simply not going to be on board with. You want to create more anti-Semitism? Say to people from your home in the Middle East how they have to conduct themselves in their home. Yeah, you want to create more anti-Semitism? That's a great way to do it. That's a great way to do it. I want to pull up one more thing, ladies and gentlemen. There's a clip that I wanted to pull up. I'm going to go and find it, which makes this all the more suspect again. So I just went and found this other clip as well. So Netanyahu's one. There's other people in the Israeli cabinet as well. And it seems that Netanyahu, from how I understand it, is one of the most right-wing administrations in Israel that we've seen in a fair while. And many people in Israel are not happy about it. So I'm not saying all of the Israeli people when I talk about this, right? I think that's one thing that often gets misconstrued. So when we talk about a nation, you're not necessarily talking about the people. You're talking about the establishment, the government, right? Oftentimes you see that the government, especially in the modern day, does not reflect the attitudes of its people. Right, and that seems to be the case with Netanyahu and his approval ratings, right? It led to many people thinking about October the 7th and the things that occurred on October the 7th. Not doubting the atrocities that happened and stuff like that, but how much did the establishment know on all of these things, right? Did they know anything about it that was going to come in? Did they kind of let it happen for political utility? And I don't think the Israeli government would be above that because of what we've seen in Britain. Britain laid a very good precedent for this when they allowed generations of their daughters, right, to be sacrificed on this altar of multiculturalism, diversity to Pakistani gangs over generations, right, in the name of their political agendas, essentially, right, in the name of the political agendas that they wanted. Why would we not expect other governments to adopt the same framework of allowing really heinous things to happen if there's a political benefit that could be gained from it? Itamar Ben-Gvir was on a clip recently cheering for more Islamic immigration into the UK and Europe. If this clip is to be believed, the subtitles are correct. Again, I don't speak Hebrew, so I'm assuming that the subtitles are going to be correct. He says, "We want Mohammed to be the most popular name in the UK. We want more Mohammeds in Britain, Sweden, and France." Very, very strange greatest ally behavior.
שומע חדשות, שמע שמוחמד זה השם הכי נפוץ באנגליה, נכון? אז אנחנו רוצים שזה יהיה השם הכי נפוץ באנגליה. בשיאנון מוחמד באנגליה, בשוודיה, בצרפת, לא פה, זה מה שומע חדשות.
So seemingly, aspects of the Israeli establishment want lovely diversity for Western countries, but they actually really like their, very ethnically homogenous near-ethno state. Oh, does this make me anti-Semitic for pointing this out? Does this make me anti-Semitic for just saying, this is what aspects of the Israeli establishment are saying, look at it, believe them? I absolutely do believe them. Seems as though what people are saying about that, it seems as though it's the right-wing factions of these people that hawk for war with their historic neighbors, go back, hundreds of years of generational enemies, right? But what's another way that you can get rid of them. Offload them onto other people in other areas of the world under humanitarian efforts. Oh, and then it starts to make a bit more sense, doesn't it? That it's not just them as well. Obviously, one of the largest contributors of this, as far as I'm aware at the very least, the Catholic organizations as well. There's very, very few. I don't think I could think of any other than a few Orthodox Christian commentators that I say that actually seem to be in favor of, indigenous claims of Europe and actually say about, keeping Europe European, that are actually against a lot of these initiatives. Right? So what are we to do with this? Well, our establishment has a solution to do with this, and it is just give these people everything that they want, essentially, as we'll get onto in a moment. Here's that clip I mentioned of seemingly Trump going squishy on possibly his main campaign promise.
Many countries opened up their prisons and dropped them into the United States. Those are the people who are getting out. And we have a lot of heart. They said, you got to lighten up on this. We have a lot of heart for people. They came in illegally, but they're good people, and they're working now on farms, and they're working in luncheonettes and hotels and all. And we're looking to get the criminals out right now, the criminals. And I think it's very important. I mean, every once in a while you see a story, we take somebody. He should be out because they came in illegally. So in theory, they should be. But we're focused on the murderers, the drug dealers, the mentally insane. We have a lot of mentally insane killers. I mean, you can't even talk to them. It'd be nice if you could have a little reason, but you can't even reason. These are seriously ill people.
So, yeah, you do have a lot of bad people. And it's not saying that everybody should be treated exactly the same. But saying you've got to lighten up on this issue. This is possibly your main campaign promise. I think if you'd made war in the Middle East your main campaign promise, you probably wouldn't have got elected. When people say deport every illegal, they mean it. Think about it. If someone broke into your house, ladies and gentlemen, even if they were nice, even if they made you a cup of tea, you want them removed, right? And then the police come around and say, well, they broke into your house, but they made you a cup of tea and they're really nice, so we're just going to leave them stay. How mortified would you be? Rightfully so. It's your house. It's your house. And the authorities won't defend it. And again, your home is your castle. It then relies on you to. Then obviously you end up going to prison for defending yourself if you're in the UK, obviously. This is a very troubling trend. Not if you're looking at this from around the world, but for Americans who were the base of getting this guy elected. They knew what they wanted. And in fairness, it seemed as though for the start of it, it was going extremely well. Now, I don't know what's happened recently, but with this, escalation in Iran seemingly operating on Israeli interests and stuff like that, which many Americans don't seem to be along for the ride with, have him turning the Dolph Lundgren treatment almost. Not literally the guy Dolph Lundgren, but his character, Ivan Drago, in Rocky IV, and he says, if he dies, he dies. Now Trump's saying about gas prices, which is another thing obviously Americans are going to care a lot about, especially with what's going on now, and it seems that gas and oil prices are going to absolutely fucking skyrocket, which again is going to mostly affect the people who are on the lower rungs, not so much at the top, which is why, again, it's where I'm going to differ with an outlook of somebody like a Tim Pool, for example, where he said, okay, a couple of bucks of gas increase, price increase, it's not too much to pay for a clean conscience. What about the people that can't afford that? What about the people that can't afford that? It's alarming if Rupert Lowe, what he said about it is to be believed. Coming up in a moment, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be bringing you that a little bit later on. How does this make for, in any way, good optics and, good organization, good governance? And again, I get it. Armchair quarterback, living room chair general, whatever you want to call it. I get it. Just commentating the situation. But it affects you. so you have a right to have your say about it. It's going to affect the people of Britain in more ways than one, right? Tice seemingly bordering on the treasonous with his remarks when he basically said that we should forfeit and give every say as to how British forces should be used, particularly the RAF, I believe the interviewer was talking about, to do with what the Israelis and the US see as appropriate. Just making sure I got the right clip a moment, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, this is the right clip. Reform UK Deputy Leader says Tice says they would send British armed forces to fight in Iran, but not only saying that, ladies and gentlemen, as the person who posted this would say, he said to do with what they see as appropriate, i.e., the US and Israel. This was an insane statement.
Have a very different stance on this. And Nigel Farage was the leader, and you were calling the shots, to say it, Richard. Would you be seeing the RAF bomb Iran?
We would be helping the Americans and the Israelis in any way they saw appropriate, because this is a strategic, permanent threat to all of our safety and interests. And look, obviously, the Americans have the greatest military resources. We all know that. But if requests were made, we would have been saying, yes, we're pleased to help.
Have a very different stance.
They've got the greatest military infrastructure in the world, seemingly. So let them go and take care of it. Maybe this is something we don't want a hand in, given now there's many, many, many people fleeing this conflict, and maybe even some people fleeing under the guise of being a civilian, but not really, now queuing up to come to Britain. Exactly as many people predicted. You bomb the country, people run away, and all of a sudden you end up with another new refugee migration wave. And it was actually people saying, I don't know if I talked about this at the start of the episode, I actually entertained this idea that, maybe it'll actually help. Maybe it'll actually help. I don't see many of the people that were clamoring for this war now clamoring to go home. Kind of weird. Kind of weird, has to be said. But he said there that we would help them, or we would do for them in whatever way they see appropriate. That is an insane statement. It just lends perfect argument or perfect credibility to the people who say that we're just a vassal state of the US, and then people who say that the US is a vassal state of someone else. You know? All the while, and this is why I'm grateful to Restore Britain existing at this present moment in time, because it's forced them in this direction where they need to actually improve their statements and rhetoric on things like illegal immigration. I think it's a case of Nigel Farage got way too comfortable, realizing that, I'm the source of the opposition and I'm all controlled. There's not going to be anybody to the right of me, that's ever going to get anywhere. So now I'm comfortable in taking my foot off the gas. I can start letting my establishment, rhetoric and ideals shine through. Say mass deportation of illegals is a political impossibility, saying we need to politically accommodate Islam. And now that Restore Britain exists and he realized there is a real threat to his position, now again, it's pulled him back in this direction. So that's why I say Restore Britain, there's only positives to its existence, provided it keeps its track, right? Provided it keeps its track. And like I said, it's trust at this point. The thing that's going to win the next election is trust. For people on the right, at the very least. Not even a case of policy at this point. They all say they're going to do pretty much the same thing, right? They all claim to want to address the same problems. So who do you trust to actually do it? It's an absolutely insane statement. The spokesperson, or a spokesperson for the Iranian regime, has now said as well, which is going to lead me into my statement from Rupert Lowe. He said now that oil prices will now go above $200 per barrel, and the person, whom I'm assuming is correct in their statement in this instance, said that at the start of 2026, oil was $60 a barrel. So now we can expect that's gone up, over threefold. This is going to have serious consequences for everybody that relies on these products, as we'll see in a moment.
ضد بشری بر حذر دارند تا شعله‌های آتش و جنگ بیش از این گسترش نیابد. در غیر این صورت اقدامات مشابهی در منطقه صورت خواهد گرفت و اگر تحمل نفت بیش از بشکه‌ای ضد بشری بر حذر.
She says, if you can tolerate oil prices above $200 a barrel, continue this game. Reality is the political class are not going to be worried about this. They're not going to be the ones suffering the main consequences of it. They said when the political class gets a cold, the working class get pneumonia. Rupert Lowe, I saved this statement. He made this statement this morning. He put it up on X. And I want to read it because it's something that it's potentially going to pave the way for something which we've never seen before. And things are already bad enough as it is for many people. Horrific news on the markets. Everything is already just so expensive for British families. With oil prices soaring, it's going to get worse, a lot worse. We should be honest about the consequences of the Iran war. Petrol is going to get more expensive, a lot more expensive. What does that do? Drive up the cost of everything. Inflation, more and more inflation. The markets are in turmoil. Life is going to get more and more costly in our country. It's reported that petrol may go through the all-time high of 191.5 pence per litre, nearly £2 per litre of fuel. That is insane. That is insane. There's many people, I know, that are struggling month to month, week to week, to get by on the level of petrol, that the price that it currently is. If you think back to frigging COVID times, one of the few good things about those times, how much the prices dropped, seemingly because there was no demand for it and nobody was really using their car, right, as much, because you were forced to stay inside. So this is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Who's going to suffer? British men and women. Is it a surprise what's happening in Iran? No, it's not. Tony Blair, Farage, and many others want Britain to dive headfirst into this war. But that's not the right decision, and we should have the courage to say so. It's what Restore Britain did on day one. If Britain starts dropping bombs, how many of these Iranian illegal migrants that have already invaded our country are poised to act, to disrupt, to kill? There will be many more attempting the crossing. Terrorists, spies, soldiers. It's just a fact. Plenty will be already be in hotels across the country. Now, again, you can read the full statement as well. I wanted to harken in on that example of the petrol, because that's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. So get ready for that, ladies and gentlemen. If you're hawking for this war, you were hawking for this war, hope you're ready for the consequences that are going to come. Who knows, maybe as the figureheads are saying now, as the talking heads are saying now, it's just short-term pain for long-term gain. Many people right now cannot even afford that short-term pain, especially when it's on foreign interests, seemingly. Britain braces for surge in Iranian asylum seekers. Migration experts say people fleeing the conflict, an estimated 2.5 million displaced Afghans in Iran could fuel migration crisis. Of course it is. Actually, wait there. Let me see if I can get the full article in a moment. Okay, managed to sort that. So I'll list this article down below, but it's what you call it, a subscriber article. And I remember I took out a trial to the Telegraph a fair while ago, and I just forgot to cancel it. But this is the one time where it's actually come in handy, because I actually managed to log in and get the full article for you. So here you go. Here it is. It is Britain's face is braced for a surge in Iranian asylum seekers in the wake of war breaking out in the Middle East. Migration experts said Iranians fleeing the conflict and an estimated 2.5 million displaced Afghans in Iran could leave the country, fuel the migration crisis. Britain's EU asylum agency has also warned that the conflict could induce a migration flux of unprecedented magnitude that could swamp the EU's borders. It's hundreds of thousands of, I saw a video the other day, hundreds of thousands of third world migrants waiting to come over to Spain, by the way, from, I believe, Morocco, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely terrifying. This is only going to make it even worse. But again, we're seeing that this is exactly what a certain aspect, a certain element of this conflict absolutely wants. They said it themselves. In an annual report published on Tuesday but drawn up before the US-Israeli strikes, the EU Agency for Asylum flagged Iran as a significant potential crisis that could reverse progress in reducing migration numbers over the past year. The report said with a population of approximately 90 million, even partial destabilization could generate refugee movements of an unprecedented magnitude. Displacement of just 10% of Iran's population would rival the largest refugee flows of recent decades. 10% of Iran's population, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is about 3 times the population of Wales. 10% of Iran's population is around 3 times Wales's entire population, which again, take that into account, it's already not 100% Welsh people. Wales already had an impact from these things, albeit not as much as many other countries and places within the UK, right? You go to the cities, you see it. I know that because I was down in Cardiff recently. Home Office has instructed caseworkers to continue processing asylum applications by Iranians as normal, despite the US-Israeli airstrikes and counterattacks by the Iranian regime. It says at the bottom, a difference from the fall of Syria with the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in December 2024 led to suspension of asylum claims from the country. Iranians seeking asylum in Britain in the coming months will, however, be among the first cohort to be subject to Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's introduction of temporary refugee status. A little bit of context for you, ladies and gentlemen. I think I forgot to... I'll bring this graph up on screen, actually, so you can see it. These are some of the numbers from the asylum claims from last year. As you can see, Iran was 3rd. That was before this war broke out. So the 3rd highest nation for asylum claims with 7,419 applications. Pardon me, behind Pakistan and Eritrea. Nearly 6 in 10, so 60% were granted. Between 2015 and 2024, Iran accounted for more asylum seekers than any other nation at 62,000, even ahead of Afghanistan, according to an Oxford University's Migration Observatory, an analysis by the observatory. 2/3 of applications were granted at the initial stage. This reminds me, and I said this on that stream as well, where I talked about it, an example of the Iranian embassy siege in 1980. Now, that was 19 years before I was born, but the example of what we could be seeing is definitely apparent. What did those terrorists do? Once the SAS broken in, taken out a few of them, what did the few remaining ones, as the civilians were being evacuated out of the building, do? They tried to pass themselves off as civilians, right? I believe there was at least there was one remaining. I believe there was one remaining, right? And he actually managed to pass himself off as a civilian and get all the way outside to the lawn. So the way it worked, when the SAS started evacuating the building, because the building was on fire, they made a single file line of all of these, the civilians, and got them walking down, not walking, accelerated walking, just trying to keep them controlled as they were going down the stairs to get out to the front lawn where they would be safe, right? Where the news media and everything else would be waiting, and EMTs, etc. And in this line, one of the terrorists tried to pass themselves off. And the guy who was at the top of the stairs, the SAS member was at the top of the stairs. So the way it worked, you had an SAS member at the top of the stairs, you had one that was midway down the stairs and one at the bottom, I believe. Or it might have just been one at the top and one at the bottom. A bit like when we used to work in lifeguarding on the slides in one of the leisure centres used to work in, you have one lifeguard at the bottom, one lifeguard at the top, monitoring who's going up and down, right? Except in the context of the slides, they go up the steps to come down the slide, obviously. So imagine people coming down the steps. And the guy at the top was trying to be like, no, that's a terrorist, but they didn't catch him until he got all the way outside. Do you want to know how he was identified? Because one of the civilians on the lawn who he was put down next to on his face recognized him and told the SAS who he was. If that hadn't have happened, there's a good chance that, it could have been a case of, well, that guy wouldn't have been caught until much later. He obviously was caught, but who knows, maybe he would have been able to slip the net and get back out. Who knows? Who knows, right? But you see how easy it is for people to pass themselves off as civilians whenever it suits, whether it's to get out of a place, or in this case in Britain, because now we have decided that we were going to get involved in some limited capacity. People who want to get in under the guise of being a civilian, as a refugee, and do us harm. And the only person seemingly with any kind of political influence, real political influence, speaking up at the moment about it, seems to be Rupert Lowe. this is what I mentioned now, ladies and gentlemen. Remember I said you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain? This is the example now. You can see I'm actually referencing, it's a page on X called Blue Georgia, right? It's a sad state of affairs. I'm now having to sort of reference this, right? Or at least show it, right? Because again, it actually is making a point which needs to be highlighted, even if just because of the optics, right? Because the right, the conservatives, were doing this with the left when it came to the political issues which they were opposed to, saying, look, this is on MSNBC, this is CNBC, this is CNN, there's all these different things, saying exactly the same thing. They've had their marching orders, they've had all these things, and they're just carrying it out. Look how propagandized they are. They just serve to propagandize you. Well, what happens then when you have things like this?
This is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain.
Short-term pay for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain, yes, but we've got some long-term gain. Short-term spike for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain for American consumers. We may have to deal with that in the short term. Short-term and temporary.
Temporary short-term pain.
It's going to suck in the short term.
Some short-term pain.
Short-term pain.
We have to focus on the short-term.
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 Short-term and long-term.
Short-term.
Hopefully this is a short-term pain. Short-term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefits.
Some short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
This is a short...
Well, I suppose we'll see, won't we? Well, I suppose we'll see. You know, and this is not entirely unfounded. I'll say that. This is literally, I'm actually, you know, wearing the jacket with one of my branded jackets at the moment. This kind of thing you explain to people in the personal training and health sector. Like when you first start going on a diet, even if we try to work out the best nutritional program is going to work best for you, it's going to suck at the start. Make no mistake about it. But again, the things you get back in terms of how healthier you are, how much better your performance is, all of these different things, how much happier you are, etc. When you lose that weight or whatever, various different contexts you can put it to. It's not saying this is without wisdom necessarily, right? Just because they're saying that, oh yeah, this manufactured line or whatever that has nothing behind it. I hope they're right. I hope they're right. Because if people in Britain now are going to have to endure all-time high petrol prices and all of these things when they're already up against it, right? When they're already up against it, when you've got farmers committing suicide because of the inheritance tax policies, when you've got people wondering already how they're going to make ends meet as a point of it already, right? The government clamping down on them more and more and more. Things only getting harder and harder and harder, right? If we now have to go through this for the sake of you, seemingly on foreign interests, then you better make sure that it is better than anything people have ever had in 6 months' time, 12 months' time. You better make fucking sure. If it's not, well, there were signs. There were signs that maybe things weren't as weren't as clear and weren't as good as these people were making them out to be. Maybe then there's more serious questions to be asked of the establishments at fault and, pardon me, maybe who they serve. So not gone unnoticed by other people as well, by the way, which you should be taking note of. You have the BRICS coalition as well. I keep forgetting who the B in the bloody BRICS coalition is. But you've got Russia, you've got India, you've got India, Russia, China, South Africa, and I keep forgetting who the B is. In fact, I'll just quickly look it up. Brazil, of course it is, Brazil. So one of those nations, seemingly seeing where this is going, right, seeing this offensive action on this part by America and Israel and the West, a lot of NATO countries, Putin has apparently now helped Iran attack the US, which is just absolutely fantastic, if it is true. Sophisticated strikes on American forces made possible through Moscow intelligence, say officials. Whether this is true or not, I have absolutely no idea. Russia is providing Iran with intelligence to strike American military targets in the Middle East. The information led to sophisticated attacks by Iranian missiles and drones against the United States radar facilities, warships, and aircraft. The intelligence also made it possible to target temporary structures that Iran's satellites could not spot, including a strike on a makeshift operations center in Kuwait that killed 6 U.S. soldiers. So again, whole point, like we'll see in a moment, that they weren't going to send American soldiers to die in these conflicts. Now they're sending American soldiers, seemingly, to die in these conflicts. Or at least American soldiers are dying as a result of these conflicts, which would be the exact thing that they said would not happen. They said that they were going to be that of peace. Moscow began to pass information to the Islamic Republic on the positions of U.S. forces as soon as the war began on Saturday. It is the first sign of Russia's active participation in the expanding conflict. One official told the Washington Post it does not seem like it's a fairly comprehensive. It does seem like it's a fairly comprehensive effort. So this is Port Shuaibah in Kuwait, and if we drag this across, this is before. And this is after. So just double check, make sure you can see that. So you can see this is before and this is after. This is a really interesting map. You could get like one of these, like a kid to play with this for ages. Anyway, Donald Trump's spokeswoman did not deny the reports. Caroline Leavitt said Russian intelligence, quote, clearly not making a difference with respect to the military operations in Iran because we are completely decimating them. We are achieving the military objectives of this operation that is going to continue. Yeah, but I think the Americans at this point, especially with what it seems to be the case with this war and what it seems to be for, are going to be more concerned, far more concerned, with those 6 Americans that have died. And rightfully so. So it's not exactly a big, feather in your cap or anything like that if it's not making a difference. A lot of people did not want this to begin with. A lot of people probably would have preferred it if those 6 Americans had still, been here to go home and see their families, kids and whatever else. A major training exercise for elite paratroopers in the US was cancelled, prompting speculation that Mr. Trump is preparing for boots on the ground in Iran. Again, did you see that anywhere on the campaign trail? I think it was the exact opposite. Let's go into it in a moment. The 82nd Airborne Division includes a brigade of combat team between 4,000 to 5,000 soldiers specializing in ground combat, which is ready to deploy on 18 hours' notice. Be absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Now, the reason why we need to talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, is because we had this with reform in 2024, how the rhetoric changed from before to after the election. It was day and night. Seemingly now, it's taken a little bit longer in America's case, but it shows that nobody is immune, which is why you cannot ever, not put scrutiny on your political leaders, even if you're sympathetic to them, even if you think you're confident they're going to do the best. Because you should always, as a person whom this is going to affect, as a person who is putting these people in a position of trust over your very life and everything to do with it, right? You should make sure that they are always operating in the best interests of your people and are staying true to what they said. The word is their bond. This was J.D. Vance in August of 2024.
Donald Trump and I believe that America ought to be tough and America ought to have a strong foreign policy. But when people like Kamala Harris send our sons and daughters, our young people, to fight in stupid wars, it is the young generation that carries the burden of that. We're going to stop sending our young people to faraway lands. We are not the policemen of the world. We need to use our young people here at home. Donald Trump and I believe.
Oh dear. Oh dear. And from what I can tell, ladies and gentlemen, it's not exactly going to get any better. If you're worried about the world spinning out of control, if you're worried about a military draft, if you're worried about, God forbid, a world war, the best way to prevent it is to vote for Donald Trump.
My honest guidance to those young men, and I think their concerns are very legitimate, but if you're worried about the world spinning out of control, if you're worried about a military draft, if you're worried about, God forbid, a world war, the best way to prevent it is to vote for Donald Trump. And I really believe that. My honest guidance.
Biggest thing is here, even if you like JD, like I do, right? It hasn't given me any big reason to not like him so far, at least from what I am aware. Right, at least from what I am aware. It makes him look like he's coming out of this now with egg on his face. And he's seemingly the guy that's now going to be running up in 2028. People are not going to forget this. Do people think that we should have short-term memories or something? We're not going to forget? That we're going to forget things like this? I still think Kamala would be worse. Make no mistake about it. I still think Kamala would be worse for the reasons that we've got essentially a male version of Kamala in New York at the moment, and there was a terror attack took place in New York recently, or an attempted one anyway, and obviously the first thing to come out and blame and condemn, of course, was not the person throwing the bomb. It was the quote-unquote white supremacist that was there agitating and whatever else. Kind of funny. One of the videos was actually somebody saying that, look, we are born and bred New Yorkers. We want everybody here. You don't get to come out from outside and say that these people have no... We condemn hate, and literally the guy who's saying this through the megaphone, the terrorist who throws the bomb over his shoulder. It's unbelievable remigration optics. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, one of the biggest things, however, that again, why I think we need to be asking serious questions of this supposed greatest ally, I've given about an hour or so of this podcast monologue to this now, for reasons like this, how seemingly this relationship is, and how seemingly problematic it is as well. And that anytime you talk about it, you get called anti-Semitic and all of these different things, right? John Kiriakou was on a podcast recently. He published this on his Rumble channel, but I believe it's from Julian Dory's show. And he said this. I created this into a YouTube short, this one little clip, on why and how the US got into this conflict. But if it's true, that's the biggest thing. If it's true, serious questions, pardon me, need to be asked.
The reason, though, I'm told, that Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran was that the Israelis said for the first time, if you don't bomb Iran to take out these deep bunkers, we're going to use nuclear weapons. And they had never threatened that before. And so Trump said, bombing Iran might actually save us from the start of World War III if it keeps the Israelis from using nuclear weapons.
So according to your source, the Israelis told the president of the United States that if he did not use the United States military power to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, Israel, acting on its own, would use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Do you see why there's a problem with that statement, John?
Yeah.
Because they've never admitted that they've had them.
That's right.
So you're telling me that they just admitted to the president of the United States that they have nuclear weapons and we still do not have them in the IAEA treaty?
I mean, if Israeli nuclear whistleblowers are to be believed, yeah, they've had them. They started working on them in the 50s. They got them around the late 60s or the early 70s. Look at Mordechai Vanunu.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't charged for treason for nothing.
That's the guy they hid in Rome with the honeypot?
Yeah.
Yeah, 86?
No, he friended me on Facebook.
So that's one section of the conversation. You can go and watch that if you're interested. Link down below. I would strongly advise that you do. John's done a lot of interviews with Julian Dory, a lot of ones that I've watched. And it's actually another segment at the moment which we're going to be going on to a different conversation as well. Israel apparently, according to John, not the only one that seemingly has nukes, but maybe hasn't declared them. He seems to hint that he thinks that Saudi Arabia might also have them. So it's not unique just to one country in this way. He seems to speculate as to whether Saudi Arabia will have a delivery system. He doesn't seem to think that, at least as far as I'm aware. Maybe things have changed. I think there might have been a slightly older conversation. But in this different conversation on the Julian Dory podcast again, John highlighted something which absolutely, blew my mind when I highlighted this, right? John, obviously ex-CIA, and was the one who blew the whistle on the torture program. He highlighted that the three main sources of like espionage and things you need to be aware of with foreign interests, chief at the top of the list of the Israelis, and then you have China and Russia, if I'm not mistaken. And he actually highlighted this with this extract of the podcast, in which he highlighted how many what are called unilateral or undeclared Israeli officers the FBI found in the US conducting intelligence operations, trying to espionage against the US, which you don't spy on your friends. That's the thing. You don't spy on your friends. So, for reference, this is a little bit of context, which John will explain now. This obviously not my information. The difference between a declared and a unilateral agent is whether you declare to the other country, the other establishment force that this person's going to be operating in, as to whether they're an intelligence agent or not. So if the US is going to put John somewhere, let's just say Pakistan, because that's a place where he's done a lot of his operations, if they go to the Pakistani authorities, say, look, John is an agent, he's going to be working here, may not tell them exactly what they're going to be doing, right? But if they declare that he's an agent and they make them aware, that's called a declared agent. If they don't make them aware, that's called a unilateral or undeclared agent. This is the difference between Israeli declared and undeclared agents operating in the US trying to steal their secrets.
That's why they're such prolific spies. I remember on my first day at the CIA, and I think I told you this before. We were in it's called the bubble, the CIA's auditorium, and all the new hires, there were like hundreds of us. And we were getting briefings, like the head of security would come and brief us, and the head of HR, and the head of this, and the head of that, and whatever. And the head of counterintelligence came to brief us and said, he explained what a declared officer was versus a unilateral officer. So a unilateral officer is you're undercover overseas, nobody knows you're CIA. A declared officer is somebody where, like, I was declared in Athens. My boss took me to the Greek intelligence service and said, this is John Kiriakou. He's a CIA officer and he's here to work with your people. Okay, so they've declared my status. So he said that the Israelis have two declared officers here. One Mossad, one Shin Bet. They work in the Israeli embassy.
They're missing 187 though.
And the FBI had, the FBI had identified 189, 189 undeclared Israeli officers, intelligence officers, and they were mostly in defense contractors all across America trying to steal our defense secrets. And later on, somebody told me, well,
So the example he gives, maybe there's a bit of context, you can watch the clip down below as well, or you can watch this full video down below. It'll be linked down below. The context was that they were then trying to strong-arm America into giving them their F-35 plans, because the Americans said, okay, can have them, but they made some very, very small, degradations to the F-35, and they called it the F-35I. And I believe they made one for the Emiratis as well, maybe with the same or similar degradations or whatever, because they didn't want everybody having exactly the same tech as they were using, right? Understandably, because then, as John highlights, if the jet crashes and one of their enemies gets a hold of it, they can reverse engineer it, find out how it works, and all of a sudden they're back on a level playing field again. So you don't want necessarily anybody having the exact same model, exact same systems that you have, right? So they made one for the Israelis called the F-35I. They made another one for the Israelis, for the Emirati, called the F-35E. And the Israelis tried to strong arm and say, no, we want your exact F-35, right? There's other reports as well, that the Israelis, every single time you seemingly meet with like Israeli intelligence, there's they try to bring presents and they're all bugged and all of this kind of stuff, right? There's like this, I think one time they brought like a doll or a stuffed animal or something like that, something cute, right? Or it might have been like a vase or something, I can't remember. But there's many accounts of this, and it'd be like, no, every single time they find just all kinds of microphones in these things. So again, very, very prolific with it. And he says because they're thinking thousands of years ahead. They're thinking for their survival thousands of years ahead, which maybe that's what we should all be doing. Maybe that's what we should all be doing. People in this are not just saying this for no reason. I don't think. John, I think he said before, his political sentiments massively lean more left. But at the end of the day, somebody from the inside who's seen this from the inside. And a lot of what he's saying seemingly now is being vindicated, seemingly with when he says Trump is held, the AIPAC's got him by the balls, stuff like that. Trump's actually come out saying now that we went to war in this instance now, or we done these massive preemptive strikes with Israel because they were going to attack Israel. Who are you working for? Who are you working for? Are you working for the Americans, or are you working for the Israelis? Simple as that. Terrifying though, with the nuke question. Because John also says in another interview he does think that they would have used them. It might have been later on in that first conversation I just played, that he thinks they would have used them. So we got some serious questions that need answering. Makes you wonder why a lot of times they don't want these inspections and whatever else. You think, what else are they hiding? Seemingly. It was the other day I found out not only they got the Iron Dome, they got the Laser Dome over in Israel, which is literally a big frigging laser thing which can just poof missiles out of the air. Right? Frigging Laser Dome. It's absolutely nuts. And then to top it off, ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the New York thing, you have all of this stuff, Trump seemingly, rolling over and showing his soft underbelly, so to speak, for these issues, and showing his teeth to the American people that elected him, especially over the Epstein files. We should think about why that may be the case. Here he is now, trying to pull off his iconic tug-of-war handshake and seemingly getting absolutely mogged by the Prime Minister or the President of Paraguay. See, when when you turn over and show your soft underbelly in this way and turn your back and turn your teeth towards your people that got you into power, that all of a sudden you lose that, like Samson losing his hair. You know what I mean? You then get, handshake mogged, of all things, by the president of Paraguay. Just horrible optic after horrible optic after horrible optic at the moment. And another thing that is absolutely as well a horrible optic is the way many people reacted to this, particularly the mayor of New York, who under his watch had a Islamic terror attack take place, or an attempted one at the very least. Luckily, the explosive device did not detonate. But Jake Lang, January 6th political prisoner, in New York recently. Jake Lang, from what I can understand, at the very least, from what I understand, is an agitator. Right? Many people on the right say he's not exactly a good guy, a little bit of a grifter. I don't know him, obviously. I think he was the guy that on January 6th was one of the guys photographed with like the mask and the shield and the bat and stuff like that, which gave the whole implication that it was this massive insurrection and stuff like that. So a lot of people on the right say that, he's not exactly the best representative, should we say. But nonetheless, the one thing he's been, very on the front lines on, and, not afraid to use racial epithets and stuff like that, will openly use them. So again, maybe put your viewing of this man through that lens, right? Nonetheless, he's been very opposed to the Islamic takeover of America, which has been increasingly happening. And again, like I said, he will go and deliberately agitate these things, seemingly. But that does not mean that the response in this instance was in any way justified, because they tried to take his life. They tried to take his life and take the life of every person around him, or we can presume, along with him, because the only thing he's guilty of is agitation. The others who were around recording him were put in danger of a homemade explosive device that was thrown at the feet of this group and luckily did not detonate in New York. So this is the video, or this is one of the videos anyway, of the attacker, which really the other videos are not exactly the best, just shows Jake and the group running away from the explosive device. This is the footage of the attacker, which you'll see now, and I want to play it with the volume on, just because I hope you hear what the attackers were shouting as they threw this explosive device. So I hope you would have heard it. I'll put that on mute at the moment. And I just want to bring this back to this bit here. You can see him holding the device there. Just see if I can get a better view of when they changed hands. So these are the two culprits right here. They've been arrested. They're now in custody, I believe. And I just want to see if you can see it here. He's holding one there, look. They are homemade nail bombs, ladies and gentlemen. That's a homemade nail bomb right there that he ran up and threw at Jake and the group whilst shouting Allahu Akbar. This was an Islamically motivated terror attack against Jake Lang and the rest of the Americans there who were protesting the takeover of their country. You can see him here in this image, ladies and gentlemen, him trying seemingly to actually light it, because on the one which he threw, which you got a really unbelievable video, an unbelievable video of him running up to throw this device, it did not detonate, luckily. Very, very luckily, did not detonate. So what was this video? This is a guy by the name of Walter Masterson. Now, again, he's by his own admission, he's a New Yorker. He was giving a speech there, by the way. He was there with this big megaphone thing. And literally saying, as a born and raised New Yorker, we welcome everyone into this city. Seemingly a lefty, seemingly a liberal in this instance, right? I think New York's pretty much just got left by, you know, there's only lefties there at this point, it seems. Then, literally, as he was saying, we welcome everyone here, a bomb gets thrown over his head. And yet, as he says in the comments of this post, he still stands by what he said. I'll let this play for you, ladies and gentlemen.
We were born and raised in New York, and we want everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside and then tell it.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We were born and raised in New York. We want everybody to stay here. You don't get to come in from outside. Saying to Jake, who's an American citizen, right? Who's an American, that seemingly here, this foreign Muslim terrorist has more place in New York than he does, because he still stands by this statement. The guy said in the comments, I will stand by it. As a born and raised New Yorker, everyone is welcome, except Jake, who says here, everyone except Chief Goat Fucker Jake Lang. So here's the post which he put up for that, ladies and gentlemen. So this is Jake, mocking the whole thing that many people of this religion do, and they've been shown to do. So this is Jake again being a deliberate provocateur. And there's a video here of him as well, kicking there's a big mural with prosecute ICE, you know, as in like it's made of ice and it says prosecute, and him kicking over the letter S and nearly tripping over himself. But again, he said he's lost to the letter S. I don't think he actually lost to the letter S. Seems that he kind of won. Apparently, the video that was circulating around, though, saying that Jake was doing horrible things to a goat in the back of a van, apparently, but if his words are to be believed, he was actually rescuing that goat from a halal butcher's that it was going to, which I don't know if that's true. So I think this is a case of, again, not necessarily saying here that all of the, like, you know, Jake's this, you know, God's gift to the world or anything like that. Obviously, I don't know him. But this guy, this guy here, Masterson, had a bomb thrown over his head by a jihadi and said that apparently that guy is more welcome in New York than Jake Lang is. And everybody who is in any way sympathetic to the causes that Jake Lang is sympathetic to, even if they disagree with some of his methods and his optics, they are not as welcome in New York as foreign terrorists are. Liberalism, folks. Liberalism. Liberalism, the kind of mental disease. Pardon me. The kind of mental disease where a Muslim terrorist literally throws a bomb over your head, and the problem for you is not the Muslim terrorist throwing a bomb over your head, it's who he was throwing the bomb at. Come on. Again, it's sad how many people think this way, though. It's sad how many people think this way as well. I had a comment on my stream the other day when I streamed on YouTube and Rumble saying that it's great to see this kind of stuff coming out of Wales because of how ultra-libertarian you guys are. I don't know where those comments have gone, by the way. Sorry, guys. Those comments have gone from underneath the recording of that stream. I have no idea where they've gone. I am so sorry, because I responded to one of them. I was going to respond to some more of them, the dialogue that came from that, which I greatly appreciate. The person who said it said they wanted to, hopefully buy me a pint when this is over, and I'll gladly take you up on that. I'll gladly share a pint with you all when this is all over, or even during, maybe, depending on what's coming up in the future. Who knows? I gladly will. And the comments are now gone, from what I can see. I don't know where they've gone. I'm so sorry. YouTube does this weird thing from time to time where they just remove comments. I don't know why. Comments just disappear. It's not me, guys. I've never deleted a comment in anybody that's commented anything on this channel, on YouTube, Rumble, etc. I've never, ever deleted a comment. So if that has gone, I'm sorry. It's nothing to do with me. This instance now, ladies and gentlemen, something very, 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 very important, close to home now, because there's how many Welsh people think this as well. Man who wanted to be Welsh spokesperson for Islamic State Jihad, jailed. So this guy, Shahzad Ali of Newport man, Shahzad Ali, has now been jailed for 4 offences, pleading guilty to 4 offences under the Terrorism Act. A man who is from BBC again, so don't expect a glowing condemnation, if anything. Let me just move this around so I can move my head out of the way. It says the guy has pleaded guilty to 4 offences under the Terrorism Act. So this is the actual articles here. So there we go. My head's out of the way now. A man who posted propaganda and tried to recruit a 17-year-old to the so-called Islamic State group on social media has been jailed for 5 years. Shahzad Ali, 21 of Newport, published hundreds of videos on Instagram and TikTok in an attempt to promote the banned organisation, claimed to be its next spokesperson in Wales. So we have these same jihadis at home soil, and yet people think that, again, it's people like Jake Lang that are the chief problem, right? Bristol Crown Court heard Ali communicated extensively online with others he believed to be linked to the group and recruited 6 men into its ranks. On Friday, he was sentenced to 5 years in custody. 5 years. 5 years for trying to promote terrorism, ladies and gentlemen, in Wales. The court heard that Ali became immersed in IS ideology between July 2024 and 2025 and January 2025, spending much of his time in his bedroom using his phone to promote the group online. Ali told the group he had first come into contact with a man called Abu Qatada, whom he believed to be an IS member fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan while playing online games such as Roblox. If your child has Roblox, ladies and gentlemen, get them off it ASAP. Not only do you have things like this they're at risk of, you also have the disgusting provision on there that Roblox attempt to stop people from exposing as well. If your child has Roblox, or they play Roblox or whatever, get them off it, especially if they're a young child. You could end up with either, a disgusting genderqueer Marxist child on your hands as want to overthrow, fight the revolution and turn their parents into the thought police for incorrect orthodoxy, and they're being preyed on by all of these disgusting people through Roblox, whom the developers try to stop people from stopping. And then you have jihadis on there as well. Ali told police he had first come into contact, we just read that. He claimed he had acted under pressure from the man, but investigators found no evidence to support. So, 1,700 messages exchanged with a 17-year-old boy over 2 months in an attempt to recruit him from IS from Al-Qaeda. He said he would be the next spokesperson for Dawla in Wales, referring to Dawla al-Islamiyya fi al-Iraq al-Sham, just as Welsh as you and me, ladies and gentlemen. Just as Welsh an organisation as any other. Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. Prosecutors said Ali posted hundreds of videos across TikTok. Christopher Amos prosecuting played 3 videos taken from Ali's social media, one of which featured Mohammed Mwazi, aka Jihadi John, holding a scalpel and a knife, while audio spoke of slaughter. During one TikTok chat, Ali claimed he worked to create media for IS, which quote-unquote reinforces the notion that the defendant was working as an influencer and propagandist for ISIS. ISIS, sorry. To avoid detection by platform algorithms, Ali disguised violent pro-IS imagery with innocent content, including pride marches and mixed martial arts. Again, highlighting how the left's causes will be useful to these people. They don't realize how useful they are in their idiocy. All they are the sheep from Animal Farm that bleats slogans, which is why you should go and watch that member's video. That exercise required you to collect, generate, edit, and publish the footage. In addition, though, through online communication, you were able to recruit 6 men into the ranks of ISIS. Absolutely, absolutely disgusting. Do you think Wales doesn't need remigration? I'm sorry, it absolutely does. It absolutely does, because, you know, it could just be any kind of political hot topic nowadays. And the next thing you know, it's not Jake Lang that has a nail bomb landing at his feet. It's just your regular Welsh man and woman or family walking down the street, or happen to be caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, or God forbid, happen to be like that foreigner in Edinburgh recently who had those 2 knives who tried to make his way into a nursery. It's serious, folks. And I get it, I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's serious. So make sure you share this fucking video. So many people just think they don't have these problems. It's because a lot of times you don't see them until it's too late. We had enough of this stuff. It needs to end. For that to end, these people need to go. It's sadly that simple. Don't expect your politicians, really, majority of them, to want to do anything, though. They'll try and disguise their intentions with little language changes, 2 letters. 2 letters, which if you don't realise what they're saying, you don't realise the ramifications of it, it's extremely important to point out. Ladies and gentlemen, John Swinney, speaking of Scotland, the leader, First Minister of Scotland and SNP leader, SNP essentially being our Plaid Cymru equivalent. Notice what he says here. I'm going to bring the post up before I play the video, because it's important to have a look at both. Notice what he says here. Scotland's future should be decided by people in Scotland, not Westminster politicians. On May 7th, vote SNP to make Scotland's voice heard loud and clear. Why is that important, ladies and gentlemen? Sounds great. The problem is this word here, in, people in Scotland. Notice he deliberately did not say people of Scotland. That should show you a lot about your quote-unquote nationalist initiatives, ladies and gentlemen, Plaid Cymru being the same. He doesn't believe that there's a Scottish person. He doesn't believe that there's a distinct Scottish person, that there's an indigenous people to Scotland. It's a globalist line. These are globalists in nationalist clothing. You're seeing here the Scotland variant, the Scottish variant. You have the Welsh variant, which is Plaid, right? You see somebody in the comments here saying the language is intentional. We used to be referred to as Scottish people. Now we are people in Scotland. But again, people in Scotland are a lot different to people of Scotland. Anybody can be a person in Scotland. That doesn't mean they're a Scottish person. But again, even if you're using the term people of Scotland, you're referring to somebody who is of that land. There's an indigenous notion in there. And that's why politicians won't use it, because they need to destroy it. It's dehumanizing. It's genocidal rhetoric. It needs to be called out. 2 letters. 2 letters in this instance conveying genocidal intent. And here's the video associated with it.
I think it's now pretty clear in opinion polls that there is a sustained majority support for independence in Scotland.
Is it?
Yes, if you look at the pattern of opinion polls, I think it is pretty clear there is a majority support for independence in Scotland. And what my politics are about doing 2 things. About working at all times to serve the people of Scotland and to make our country more successful and to deliver better outcomes for people in Scotland, but then to enable the country to take the choice about our future and to make sure that Scotland's future is in Scotland's hands. And that.
See how then he used them interchangeably? So it seems in the eyes of our politicians, they use these terms quite interchangeably. But I think there he deliberately chose in the statement, people in Scotland, to convey that he doesn't believe there's such a thing as a Scottish person. It's obviously dehumanizing. And if you dehumanize somebody, you end up then with no problem or a lot less problem in doing away with them on a population level scale, right? There's no such thing as an indigenous Brit. There's no such thing as an indigenous English person, or the English are not indigenous to these lands. And so therefore, if they're all ethnically replaced, it's not an ethnic cleansing. It's not a genocide. They were never indigenous to it in the first place. We all at some point seemingly hailed from Africa. So that means that Africans are just indigenous to everywhere. You know, it makes sense then how our politicians can do things like completely ethnically cleanse these lands, and politicians can turn on their native peoples in this way and not bat an eye because they don't even see them as human. It's dehumanizing rhetoric at the end of the day. Another really, really terrifying and really harrowing scene coming out of Scotland as well recently in Glasgow. Glasgow Central Station, as far as I'm aware at the very least, has essentially been destroyed because of all things, a fire that seemingly started in a vape shop on the street. So these are the scenes that came out of Glasgow late last night as firefighters were attempting to get the blaze under control. This is really, really awful to see that due to a vape shop apparently catching fire or whatever it was, that the fire spread to many other areas, and now Glasgow Central Station has become a victim of this, iconic listed building as well. It seems it's now gone up in flames and partially collapsed because of a fire in a vape shop, whom I've seen people speculating that the vape shop, which many people were predicting, was foreign owned. So I'm not sure. I haven't had that corroborated. Myself, right? So I haven't seen anything to do with that. Some people then saying that it's not the station, but the building's in the northeast corner of the block. But I saw some other people with other videos saying that, the central station had essentially, come down. And it's really, really awful to see. So again, for anybody affected, please, keep them in your mind, keep them in your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, please do. And maybe never see things like this again. These are the fruits of modernity, essentially. And why, in many ways, to move forward, we need to start thinking about what we were doing in the past and thinking about how we start doing that again. Traditions are traditions for a reason. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, last couple of stories for today. We now have the psychopathic Greens moving on to the next stage of their capitulation, which, as we've seen, that they are pretty much as far to the left as you can go, as far as I can see. They're massively supporting unfettered third world immigration, no matter how culturally incompatible or whatever else these people are with Britain. They don't care about the Britain or anything like that. They'll happily allow that to continue if it means they can import voting blocks en masse, if it means they can sacrifice all of us to their god of diversity and multiculturalism to a frankly ridiculous extent, to the net zero pagan sun gods. It's now moved on because obviously one of their chief councillors and seat holders is a Muslim himself, Mohsen Ali, that you're now going to have licenses. British people, regular British people, are now going to have licenses for their dogs, but you don't need license, or the unfettered amount of third worlders coming in are not going to need any license, and in fact they are a strength. It's not dogs that are the strength, seemingly, the dogs that would, you get a big intimidating dog, and maybe somebody thinking about doing some really heinous things to you. If you're a lone woman walking down the street, may think twice, because obviously you're not allowed to own a gun, you're not allowed to own pepper spray. You go out with a knife or with a baton, you're likely to get arrested yourself if you happen to be in a situation where you have to use it. It's led to many people thinking that maybe investing in a protective animal is a good thing. Well, now you're going to have a license for that, ladies and gentlemen, under the Greens' new policy. Zach Polanski's party has been blasted as barking mad by the Conservatives. Green Party would force Britons to hold a license to keep dogs as pets should it win the next general election. Party intends to push the measure on more than 13.5 million British dog owners, policy documents on its website show. Why is there? What the hell is that? Sorry, guys. Audio from a tab all the way over there keeps playing for some reason, so apologies about that. Hopefully the audio will get filtered out in the post-processing. Dog licenses were axed in Britain in 1987, but all pooches have been required to be microchipped since 2013. The Greens would establish a two-tier dog licensing system with different rules applying to those who breed the animals. The policy is listed on the Greens website. Reads, the Greens are opposed to wholesale breeding, manipulation and destruction of those animals who are chosen as companions to the human race. We will introduce measures to regulate the care and conditions for such animals, including a two-tier system of dog licensing, breeding and non-breeding, licensing of all animal breeders and dog owners. I'm a case. I don't particularly like the practices that a lot of breeders, use, and the reasons that a lot of dogs are bred for, right? But that doesn't mean that people who just buy the dogs as pets need to have licenses for those pets. It's part of the whole system. The reason why there now need to be signs put out everywhere to say, well, you can take your dog and well, you can't. But it's for reasons of not offending people, right? It's just another step towards that route of capitulation to a foreign society and foreign norms, because our politicians are trying to appeal to greater voting blocks of foreigners, right? And they're trying to say that we'll change our society to accommodate your foreign customs if you vote for us. And eventually it'll be a case of, because of how dogs are viewed in this society, they'll be done away with. They'll be done away with entirely, essentially. You won't be able to own one at all. Think of how that's going to impact farming and all other industries as well, man. Dogs bred for a certain purpose in that regard. Despite Britain scrapping licenses almost 4 decades ago, Ireland has kept the retirement requirement in place. Dog owners in the Emerald Isle must pay a fee of £17 per year, or one lifetime sum of £120, and obviously then insinuating that it's just a cash grab. These things are not the problem. These things you see on screen now, ladies and gentlemen, they are not the problem. Sorry. The people coming in and the treacherous politicians that have brought us to this point are the problem. That's just the reality. If we've gotten along for the last, 40 years without it, why do we need for it to come back? It's just another stepping stone towards the capitulation of British society to a foreign society, and a cash grab, blatant cash grab, on the part of treacherous politicians, treasonous politicians even. And this comes as news. A small story, and a much larger story to finish off today. People are now coining the Farage wave, the Maloney wave, as I covered before. Think about it, who is actually the problem? Is it the dogs? Or is it the people coming over? People who maybe are not of benefit to British society? Maybe people who, need to go home, massively sharpish. In Italy, a Moroccan man has been arrested for attacking a 26-year-old woman with a saber and repeatedly her in Botanuco. So this is the article coming up on screen now. The woman was reportedly beaten with a saber and repeatedly. But it's dog licenses, ladies and gentlemen. Migration is apparently the strength. Dog licenses are not. Dogs are not, sorry. 43-year-old Moroccan man residing in Botanuco has been arrested following a violent attack on a 26-year-old woman that included assault with a saber and repeated cases over the course of a single night. The victim, who was reportedly by the suspect, regained consciousness on Sunday afternoon following the attack. She woke up on a man's bed without clothing on her lower body, suffering pains throughout her body, a bruise on one temple, a hot wax burn on one hand, lower back pain, scratches and swelling. With no memory of what had happened in the preceding hours, she immediately fled. She grabbed the first clothes she could find, picked up an old Motorola phone she spotted, and went out onto the street and called emergency services. Tunisian on trial for an attempted murder of a 66-year-old Italian woman is set for psychiatric evaluation. Wow, another great headline coming up. Remix news really coming in handy with this stuff. She then told medical workers at the Pope John the 23rd hospital what she could remember. Staff identified traces of violence and kept her hospitalized for several days. The Carabinieri of Osho-Soto, who had arrived alongside the ambulance, also took her account, including a recollection of having seen large quantities of drugs on the premises. Investigators were able to piece together what happened to the woman on the evening of February 27th, when the woman went with an acquaintance to visit the Moroccan man. His full role in arranging the encounter is still being investigated. I had an impulse after a vile attack against an Italian woman in Garate. Mayor praises remigration, says foreigners commit half sexual crimes in Italy. Good stuff to see this bit here. The praises bit was good to see. Suspect identified as HM initially appeared friendly, but his demeanor changed abruptly when the woman declined his request to drink green tea, to take drugs, and to take a shower with him. He threw a glass object at her, struck her in the side of the head with an iron object, dragged her into the bedroom where he attempted to persuade her to shower with him. It is at that point the woman's memory went completely blank. Investigators believe she was given a substance without her knowledge. It was during this period that she was repeatedly... Notice they keep the face obscure. Keep the face obscure for this reason. African refugee bit off her ear during brutal and physical assault in Sondrio. Saturday evening, officers visited the suspect's home in Botanuco and found him there along with 82 grams of cocaine, 10 grams of hashish, packaging materials, €730 in cash, believed to be proceeds from drug dealing. Also recovered were 2 sabres, each approximately 1 meter long, one of which was believed to be used to beat the victim. The woman's jeans and leather jacket were still on the floor. Trousers bore biological traces consistent. Seaman, the man was arrested on the spot. Foreigners commit 44% of sexual violence cases in Italy, half of gang rapes, while only representing 9% of the population. Maybe we should get a license for these people. Maybe we should get a license from these people and remove them from our societies and realize that it's not the dogs that are the problem. Many instances, sadly, around the world, seems that in Britain, or at least for a long time anyway, even our animals were more civilized and better companions than large swaths of various parts of the rest of the world. Maybe we're going to import anything. Maybe we can import more dogs. Maybe we can save them from horrific fates in butcher shops in China and all places like that. Maybe we can save them from horrific fates elsewhere. Maybe we can save, cats from being torn open, quite literally, with their bare hands, their throats torn open by people of cultures who literally drink their blood from their necks whilst they are still alive. Yes, I've seen videos like that, people. It's absolutely horrifying. I'm not going to put it on screen for obvious reasons. Yes, there was a video from one part. I can't remember if it was in Haiti or if it was somewhere in Africa. Guy, literally his bare hands, cat body by the one hand, head in the other, ripped it, drinking the blood from its throat while it was still alive and trying to escape. I'm sorry, but I'm also not. Remigration is necessity. Remigration is necessity, and it's the one issue that matters more than any at this present moment in time. And the reason why so many of our politicians don't want it is because they're banking on the blocks that they brought in. It's treason. It's nothing less than treason. And they should all be held to account for it. So I'd strongly advise, whilst we still have the time, and whilst they've still not yet betrayed their voter base, and I'm very much so hoping they do not, I'm confident that they won't. I think we've got a good one this time, folks. I think we may have a good one. I would urge you to get behind Restore Britain today. Even if maybe they're not going to be able to affect anything in Wales on May the 7th, right? The election that we've got coming up on May the 7th. This is not just an issue that affects Wales. It's not just an issue that affects England. It's not just an issue that affects Scotland or any of these other countries of Britain, the British Isles, and any of the other countries throughout Europe and the West. This is a united effort. It's a war against indigenous peoples. It's a war against the indigenous peoples of these isles and all of these other countries throughout Europe and the West. The 80 to 100 years, maybe even longer, depending on who you ask, of betrayal needs to end. So I would strongly advise, it's just my opinion, maybe you disagree, there's no splitting the vote on the right, because Reform are not right-wing by any means, to get behind Restore Britain. Because if nothing else, at least at this present moment in time, I think they can be trusted far more than any of the others. And that'll do it for today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching, listening. I hope that you found it useful. Not so much enjoyed it, because obviously there's not really that much in there that we enjoy talking about. But thank you ever so much for watching and bearing with me. Greatly appreciate it. Stay tuned. interview will be coming out very, very soon. In fact, because I've seen that Kim has posted a clip of one of the interviews on her social media, I assume that gives me the go-ahead to post it. So if you go over to YouTube, now in the members area, if you go on over to Patreon, and it'll very, very soon be up on locals as well, if you go on over to those and check out the conversation with Kimberly Isherwood, if you take out the membership, you'll be able to get access to that now. So enjoy that, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be coming up for you guys very, very soon. If not, thank you very much for watching. Diolch yn fawr. Hwyl fawr to see you next time, and you take care now. Godspeed.